Good morning, Incarnation 5th grade readers of the world. Today we are reading our novel, obviously, and we are reading chapter 26 through 28. And as we read today, one of the things we're going to focus on is sort of how, especially as we're getting to this part of the book, how these chapters are building up towards the climax, right? That means that these events are building up to something really important, right? And it keeps the reader reading because the reader wants to get to that big climax, right? To that place where everything goes down, to where you're finding out sort of the big revelation at the very end. Or not the very end, but towards the end. So with that said, right, some of these words might be new, so we'll turn to our board. Now, if, for example, our story was about a dog, right, and we'll say a little dog is in the park. All right, so we got our setting down, we got our beginning. There's a dog in the park, and now we're gonna say, okay, there's a dog in the park, and dog walks in the grass. And then we'll say dog eats grass. So from these events, there isn't much tension, there isn't much action that's making you feel like this is a really interesting story. I want to know what's going to happen next. Oh, snaps, what's going to happen? Wait, what? It's a lot of simple events that don't really lead to anything, right? There's no tension, there's no conflict. Dog's in the park, dog walks in the grass, dog eats grass, right? We're not afraid for the dog, we're not worried about the dog, we're just sort of watching him eat grass. Not a lot of action, right? Not a lot of rising action, right? Because yes, there is action, as in he's walking, he's eating, he's in the park, but none of that is building up to anything interesting, right? There's no conflict there, it's just a dog eating grass, and so it's not very interesting and it's not very exciting. It doesn't make us feel like we want to know what happens next, right? It doesn't build any suspense, besides my hair being floppy, but it's okay. However, right, what we're going to start seeing, especially in the book, is that certain events start building up this suspense, right, so that we get really excited and we want to know what happens next, right? So that's called the rising action, right? Rising action is the events that start building up the tension, that start building up our suspense, so that we're like, because in this case, dog in the park and walking around, who cares, right? But if we start off with dog is in the park, and then let's say the next one is dog sees other dog, it's starting to get somewhere. Turns out dog is actually a wolf. Now we're like, oh snap, there's a wolf there. Wolf growls at dog and approaches him. Now we're starting to think, oh snaps, okay, there's something that's about to happen. There's a little bit of suspense now of saying, well, this dog might be in danger. Is the dog gonna fight the wolf? Right, that starts building toward climax, which could be, right, the big fight possibly between dog and wolf, right? Can the dog overcome a wolf, or will the poor dog be torn to bits? Dun dun dun, right? It's building up to your climax, sort of your big conflict ending in a big way, right? And obviously for my climax is sort of the big battle, the big all the conflicts are leading to this. I decided to use a little Thanos glove, right? The gauntlet, just because I thought that was an excellent climax, right? Because if you think about the Infinity War series, for any of you Marvel watchers out there, even if you're not, little hints, right? Basically, all these superheroes have these movies and they build up to the Avengers, so they start getting up to this group, and then they start building up to fight this huge boss who has the power of basically the universe in his hand once he has all of the gems, right? And so, or the Infinity Stones if you want to be specific, because I know some of you will be mad at me if I don't say the right words. And so, basically, right, it builds up to the giant battle where they're all heading on the biggest and baddest Avengers against the biggest and baddest bad guy with the Infinity Gauntlet. So it leads us to this place where everyone wants to see what's gonna happen. The big battle is awesome. You have, the greatest show on earth. And so that would be the climax. After the climax, we can talk about that later. But just to say, that's what it builds up to, right? If a story doesn't have a good climax, or if it's not building up to anything, people sort of lose interest because we don't want to know what's going to happen next. If you are building up suspense, you really want to know what happens next, right? You really want to know how is this going to end and how are they going to battle it out, or you just want to watch the climax because, for example, in Avengers Infinity War, a lot of us really did just want to see that big battle between all the bosses, right? Like, it's incredibly awesome. It's interesting to watch. In my case, right, I liked Infinity War better than I liked Endgame because I thought the climax was more real and interesting because of the snap, right? That actually happens because you're like, what? As opposed to Endgame, which great climactic scene, right? The big battle is really awesome because of how many heroes you have there, but a little too happy for me. As weird as that sounds, I thought it was a little too happy. I like the oh my goodness of Infinity War because you had no idea this was gonna happen and you're just kind of sitting there wondering, did this really just happen? Which is interesting because then it starts building up to the next climax, which is the next movie, right? Which would eventually be in the Endgame. So that was me nerding out on Marvel movies, but it's true, right? That's how it works as far as how we see events build up. They build suspense so that it gets to a climax, as opposed to if it's just flat and there is no conflict, there is no suspense. And so today, right, we're going to read 26 through 28. Take note of what's happening and think about, how is this building up suspense and what climax might this be leading up to, because there's definitely some rising action going on in our chapter. So let's get to the reading, chapters 26 to 28, and I'll see you later. Adventures.